They need to include in the process people who play the game enough to discover problems like this before they show up in the version that all the rest of us get. Just recalculate those things based on the overall strength of the army that you just defeated or something. Anything other than making it so much based on whether or not you actually wounded the enemy lord in the battle. Very easy fix. Should have been done a long time ago. Again, I made this video 9 months ago. I made that recommendation back then. Really wish they would have listened to me back then. Okay, this is a fundamental mistake. The way that we have this game working right now, it really emphasizes some of the bugs in our battle mechanics that we can easily just take the spotlight off of those problems in the battles if we just change the design here so that we're not incentivizing all of the players to constantly run down the enemy lords at the end of battles. Change it so that when that gate gets opened for the first time, it stays open for the rest of the battle. Not a perfect solution. I know others have mentioned better solutions. I'll even offer the second suggestion, which is a much better suggestion, but it might be more difficult for them to do, which is you can't open or close that gate if there is an enemy unit within a certain proximity of it. That's a much cleaner solution, but I don't know how difficult that would be to code. If it is difficult to code that, I would rather just see that gate either be permanently open or permanently closed. You just can't have this constant, or I shouldn't even say constant. You can't have opening and closing happening at all when that gate is being attacked. You know, that's what causes the bug. So, like I said, it's an inelegant solution, but it would at least eliminate the most frustrating part of the walled city battles completely if you just make it so that once that gate gets opened for the first time, it just stays open for the rest of the battle. To summarize, I'm trying to illustrate what I think are the 3 biggest problems in the game. Not the only problems in the game, but if they could fix just these 3 things, I believe it would go so far into making this game back into the masterpiece that it ought to be. Still a flawed masterpiece, don't get me wrong, it's not going to fix everything, but these 3 solutions, I believe, would go so far towards eliminating the 3 most frustrating aspects of the game that are really holding down the enjoyment that you can get out of this game right now. Hey guys, Michael here. I wanted to follow up on the most recent videos that were basically, let's face it, bashing CA and the current state of Warhammer 3. However, hopefully bashing it's not the right word, providing, let's say, constructive criticism to CA with respect to the current state of the game. What is the overall perspective in terms of it being a pretty good game where there's still a lot of fun to be had in it, but there have now crept into the game several unacceptable problems that really need to be fixed, probably ASAP, before they do the Tides of Torment DLC, for example. So what I wanted to do in this video is follow up on that, because this channel is not all about complaining. This channel is also about solutions, right? So again, like I said, constructive criticism. It's not enough to just say, hey, this is unacceptable, fix it. But as I try to do almost every time that I talk about a particular problem in the game, I try to also provide some kind of solution when I can see a solution is possible. And so that's what I want to do in this video, is I kind of want to pull things together. So there's been a fair amount, obviously, of drama going on with this game, and there's been a bunch of different videos made. Obviously, we have a seismic shift in the YouTube Warhammer 3 community, with Legend deciding what he has decided. Not going to talk about that at all in this video. I think that's probably been talked about enough, other than, once again, wish him well. But But yeah, I want to just kind of pull all these things that have been bouncing around together and offer my suggestions if by some chance Creative Assembly were to find this video, not just what I have to say, but also what you guys have to say in the comments, because as always, you guys are always providing really good feedback as well in the comment sections of these videos. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to accomplish in this. Now, what I'm doing here in terms of the videos in the background is I'm pulling together a couple of different videos that I have made in the past that I think are indicative of the most important things that CA needs to do. So this is basically my best case scenario. This is my recommendation to Creative Assembly. These are what I feel like are the biggest problems in the game right now. I think that they are solvable, and in a perfect world, this is what I would like to see them focus on as soon as possible. So I think because it's been sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, we're going to talk about the AI for the Lizardmen and the Tomb Kings. I'm going to expand upon that just a little bit, but obviously at this point, I'm going to assume everybody is pretty much familiar with the AI problem with these. And of course, the fact that they were introduced in a patch that was supposed to be a rework for the Lizardmen and the Tomb Kings. That's actually the aspect of this that I want to focus on a little bit more. So I've got a video here that I made, I don't know, a week or so ago, which is basically taking a look at can AI mods fix the passive's not even the right term, the brain dead AI for the Lizardmen and the Tomb Kings, and it was pretty clear that no, they cannot, which is unfortunate. But you know what? There's a lot of problems that CA is going to have to fix in the game themselves. It's not something that the modding community, as great as they are, can do for them. So we need CA to basically go in and make the AI for Lizardmen and Tomb Kings not so completely brain dead. Now, I know that Legend did a video on this yesterday. I watched, honestly, I'll be upfront here. I watched the first few minutes of it. It came across to me a little bit as a let's trash CA, and I'm not going to defend CA because I think that there's absolutely legitimate criticism there, but I wasn't really interested at that time in watching 15 or 20 minutes or however long that video was of just of criticizing CA's approach. Yeah, CA needs to rethink their approach. I agree with that, but I already know that I don't really need to have that reinforced. So anyway, the announcement that CA made that they're aware of the problem and they're fixing it, I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? But hopefully, we can take them at their word and that they are taking the problem seriously and are really going to address it. So since we now know that AI mods do not fix that problem, it is definitely going to be something that CA has to do for themselves. It doesn't seem to me like it should be that hard for them to make the legendary lords for the Tomb Kings and for the Lizardmen to behave like the legendary lords, like, the major factions of all of the other races. Even the minor factions of the Lizardmen and the Tomb Kings are working okay. So, just make them behave like everyone else. It shouldn't be that difficult to fix, I don't think. But, obviously I'm not deep in the code in this game, so I don't know exactly what the holdup is. Okay, but the thing that I want to emphasize with respect to this AI problem is I think it illustrates the need for Creative Assembly to take a serious look at their internal processes and reallocate resources if necessary, but they need to put a bigger emphasis on quality control. And quite frankly, I don't want to make any assumptions here, but it seems to me they don't play their own game enough. They need to include in the process people who play the game enough to discover problems like this before they show up in the version that all the rest of us get. So whatever your processes are that you can massage to allow that step to happen, I think is a really important thing that CA needs to do moving forward, because we've seen this pop up, whether we're talking about the unacceptable power, I don't even want to call it power creep, just the broken nature of some of the legendary lords, Skulltaker and Arbol, in the DLCs that come out. You know, there are just times where it's kind of like, did you guys not play your game? Did you not see that this was going to be a really major problem? And if you did, why didn't you give yourselves enough time to make the changes or whatever? So I just feel like CA does need to take a step back and look at their own internal quality control methods instead of releasing this stuff to the greater community and then getting the kinds of feedback that they're getting right now. They really need to discover some of this stuff before it goes live. Now, I will say, we know that the way that games are made these days, we know that they come out with bugs in them. I'm not saying that there should never be a bug that finds its way into the game. What I'm saying is there are some pretty significant issues here that are either bugs or they're design flaws that should have been caught somewhere in their design, coding, testing, quality control process. And that's supposed to be, I worked in IT for 10 years. That's supposed to be an iterative process that, you know, it's just like for me writing a book and going through the editing process. The writing is sometimes the easy part. The editing is the hard part. When I was in IT, the coding was the easy part. The testing and fixing was the hard part. So yeah, you just need to have processes where it's built in that you have these iterative processes where you identify problems, you go back. You don't necessarily have to redesign everything, but you do have to sometimes redesign things if they were just not designed correctly. But more often than not, you just have to identify bugs and fix them before they find their way into the greater community. And I'll just go ahead and leave it at that. We're going to go ahead and say that's problem number one that has to be addressed as quickly as it can be. It is impacting I'm going to say it impacts every campaign because by the time you get to mid or late game, it pretty much is affecting every campaign. Obviously, there are some campaigns that you can play that don't have any immediate interaction with the legendary lords for the Lizardmen or the Tomb Kings, and so you can kind of play through a campaign and not see it having affected anything for at least a little while. In fact, that's kind of coincidentally just been the case in the Let's Plays that I've been doing on this channel. My Emperor Karl Franz campaign isn't really being affected by it because, again, the Empire, not really particularly close to any major Lizardmen or Tomb Kings legendary lords. My Epidemius campaign, same thing. The Gorok campaign that I started, well, that's a little bit different because I'm actually playing one of the legendary lords for the Lizardmen. Now, it is noticeable in that campaign that Tehinowen is a problem, but overall, you know, I always knew that I was going to have to be the one to deal with Skrulk anyway, so you know, it's impacting that campaign, but it's not been like so bad that it's ruining that campaign or anything like that. And then, of course, in the Ikaclaw campaign, we're not far enough in that we've really encountered any of those two legendary lords factions either. So anyway, those two races, I should say. All right, so this has got to be the number one thing that they fix, but I don't think it's enough. I have mentioned before that there are several other unacceptable bugs in the game, and what I'm actually going to do here, I hope this doesn't come across as me patting myself on the back, but I was re-watching one of my videos. I'm going to go ahead and pause this one and jump into another one of my videos that I made 9 months ago. And I talked about the two biggest problems in Warhammer 3. And I'm actually going to roll a couple of minutes of it because I don't think I can say any better right now than what I said 9 months ago. So that's what I mean by, you know, patting myself on the back here, because this is an issue that I had pointed out way back then, and it has indeed continued to be the problem, and it would have behooved CA, I think, to have seen this video and listened to it and taken it seriously back then. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and play, like I said, just a couple of minutes of this and then add on to it. I think the impulse to criticize is stronger than the impulse to praise. And I think that through how many times, have you gotten a product or a game or, a book, a movie, whatever, and you disliked it enough and that motivated you to provide some kind of a feedback, whereas quite often when we quite like something, we're just not as motivated to provide any feedback. So the same thing is true when it comes to this game. And at the time that I made this video, it wasn't the lowest point, but it was definitely a time when this game was receiving a lot of criticism. And I myself was providing criticism. Obviously, I'm even saying the two biggest problems in Warhammer 3 here. The point that I wanted to make then was that it's still a really good game, and I still believe that even today. 9 months later, even though CA has not addressed these problems, I still think it's a really good game. As I've said repeatedly recently, there is still a lot of fun to be had here. I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I don't want to lose sight of the forest for all the trees. So just wanted to get that out there. The urge to criticize is stronger than the urge to praise, and there are things that are worth praising when it comes to this game. So this is not just me bashing, just piling on to, all the criticism that's already being leveled at this game, but rather recognizing that there's a lot to like here, but really feeling very strongly that they've got to address some of these other problems. Let's get this game to where it really ought to be without, quite frankly, all that much trouble. These last two problems I can offer. I've done so before. I'm going to continue to offer my suggestions that would be really easy fixes. They're not great fixes, don't get me wrong. They're not going to turn this into a perfect game, but they would eliminate the extremely frustrating nature of these problems. So let's go ahead and move back into this video. Years, Creative Assembly and the Warhammer series have gotten an awful lot of criticism, and I think much of it is warranted. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that they certainly haven't deserved a lot of the criticism, but I do think sometimes we can lose the forest for the trees, and I want to make it very clear that I think that this is overall a really great game. Having said that, let's talk about that 5%. So there are a few things in this game that absolutely drive me crazy. As any of you who have watched any of my Let's Plays know, there's a couple things in particular that just recur on a regular basis that are really, really bad. And I know that obviously a lot of people really love the DLCs to contain new content. I understand that. I get it. I myself enjoy playing the new Legendary Lords when they come in, the new mechanics that get introduced in the DLCs. I like the reworks that happen. All of those things are great. But having said that, I would be perfectly fine if they never ever released another DLC. I think there's already so much to do in this game. It's already such an amazing sandbox experience. I don't really see more content as being the most important thing that they could do to improve this game. Now, having said that, I am not so naive to suggest that they're going to stop doing the DLCs in favor of fixing existing problems, because obviously they make a lot more money from releasing DLCs and getting people to buy those than they get from bug fixing. Having said that, I wish that we as a community would push them a little bit harder to fix a few of these things that are problems in the existing game. So like I said, I'd be happy if they never released any more DLC, but instead focused on fixing some of these existing issues. Now, and at the same time, I'm not so naive as to believe that they would actually do it. But, for what it's worth, I thought I would go ahead and talk about this anyway. So I've got some clips here from some campaigns, which I think are going to kind of make a pretty clear illustration of the sorts of problems that I'm talking about. And it really boils down to two main issues, and I will tackle each of them separately. I'm going to make a little bit of a suggestion for one of them. Let's just go ahead and jump right in. Go ahead and mute myself, and allow this to continue to play in the background. I'm going to talk about what these two problems were with my suggestions, and actually this time I'm going to focus on I actually have solutions for both of them. Again, I want to make this very, very clear. They are not perfect solutions, by any means, but they're a way to eliminate the worst of the frustration that occurs with these two problems. So I'm going to take them in the order that they are in this video, although I would probably reverse them in terms of priority. I think that the AI problems with the Lizardmen and the Tomb Kings, I'm not saying that all the other AI is perfect. Also, I want to make that very clear. AI in general, despite the fact that they keep telling us that they're going to improve the AI is still not where it needs to be overall. But in terms of the immediacy of the problem, the Tomb Kings and the Lizardmen Legendary Lords AI in particular, that needs to get fixed. That's the number one priority, I think. Okay, number two priority is actually the second of the two that I list here in this particular video. The two biggest problems in Warhammer 3, which is the running down of the enemy lords at the end of battles. I have said many times, it's extremely frustrating. It's so unfun. It's time consuming. It illustrates so many of the problems that pop up in battles. It's almost like they're condensed. I'm actually going to jump ahead in this video and then I'll jump back to it. So enemy lords, here we go, right here, as I described then, chasing down fleeing lords. So there's a problem in this game that really encapsulates so many of the problems that pop up in battles. Things like missile units not firing when you want them to, flying units not charging when you tell them to, units getting hung up when they shouldn't be, not following orders, getting distracted by something that they've accidentally brushed up against and now they've completely forgotten your attack orders and they're not attacking the unit that you told them to. All of these things are problems in the battles that should be fixed, and then they all get exacerbated when you are trying to run down fleeing units at the end of a battle, in particular enemy legendary lords. I'm showing an example here in the background of an enemy legendary lord that is an extremely, what should be vulnerable enemy lord, and as you can see, he's got 162 hit points at the time that I'm looking at this right now, and his health is ticking down so incredibly slowly, despite the fact that he's completely surrounded by units. It's just an illustration again. The attack animations don't work. Missile units don't fire when they're supposed to. Flying units don't charge the way they're supposed to. I've illustrated all these different things ad nauseum in multiple videos on this channel. I'm not going to go into all the details here, other than to say, please, for the love of all that is holy, Creative Assembly, change the game so that we are not motivated to run down and kill the enemy lord at the end of every battle. The whole reason why I go through this frustrating sequence of trying to kill this fleeing enemy lord is because you get so much more loot out of the battle when you wound or kill the enemy lord. Just recalculate those things based on the overall strength of the army that you just defeated or something. Anything other than making it so much based on whether or not you actually wounded the enemy lord in the battle. Very easy fix, should have been done a long time ago. Again, I made this video 9 months ago. I made that recommendation back then. Really wish they would have listened to me back then. I know, I'm a small channel. It's ridiculous for me to think that CA would have heard about that suggestion way back then. But again, all I'm saying is, maybe if enough of us kind of pile on, maybe they'll hear, it'll boil through the ether to them and they'll realize, oh, okay, this is a fundamental mistake. The way that we have this game working right now, it really emphasizes some of the bugs in our battle mechanics that we can easily just take the spotlight off of those problems in the battles if we just change the design here so that we're not incentivizing all of the players to constantly run down the enemy lords at the end of battles. Okay, so again, not a perfect solution by any stretch of the imagination. I would far rather they fix all of those different mechanics that aren't working correctly in battles, but I can live with it if all they do is they just change it so that we're not incentivized to go through the frustrating aspects of battles in literally every single battle. All right, so that's the first one. The second one then, as I mentioned before, as I showed a little bit of before, in this video I just call it the pathfinding in siege battles. Again, I'm all about trying to offer useful solutions in this video, solutions that can be done fairly quickly. So I'm not going to just say they need to fix all the pathfinding and siege battles. There's a lot of different aspects to what's wrong with the pathfinding and siege battles, but the most important thing that they need to fix is the gate bug, which again only happens in siege battles, and it happens in almost every walled city battle, which is that when the AI is defending, at some point they open the gate. You can't attack it anymore. If you had a unit already attacking it, like usually, a lot of us send our legendary lord in right away to attack that gate. We start doing damage to it. They open up the gate, and it creates this buggy, weird, sort of surreal existence for your legendary lord, where they're now inside the city, but the gate looks open. You can't keep attacking the gate. You can't do any more damage to it unless they close it again, and a lot of times they don't. But you also, even though the gate looks open, you can't move your legendary lord back out, and new units can't come in, and so now your legendary lord is stuck in this state of limbo where they're taking damage, they're fighting inside the enemy city. You can't reinforce them. You can't really change what they. You can't change them back to trying to damage the gate. Anyway, it just creates this monstrous problem. It is possible, to kind of finagle what your legendary lord, or it doesn't have to be your legendary lord, any unit that is, that was caught trying to damage that gate at the time when it opened it up, you can kind of redirect them, but it requires such a level of micro that is just not fun, and it's quite frankly often not even possible to do. It's counterproductive to do that level of micro in a battle that's 40 versus 40. You really have to be paying attention to everything else that's going on the battlefield. You can't sit there and micromanage a single unit because of this gate bug. So anyway, enough said about all that. Like I said, I've made other videos about it that go into more detail about it. There are other, like I'm illustrating here in the background, there are other pathfinding problems that exist in siege battles. I would love if those get fixed as well, but like I said, to focus on simple solutions in this video, I think that if they do three things, if CA does three things, if they address the Lizardmen and Tomb Kings AI, which again, I can't offer the solution there other than to say, just have them do the same thing as every other AI, and that will at least eliminate the most aggravating part of the existing problem. If they do that, if they fix it so that, I shouldn't say fix it, if they change it so that you are no longer incentivized to have to wound or kill the enemy lord in every battle, I can live with immediately clicking that end battle button right after the army losses kick in and the button pops up. I don't want to spend as much time trying to run down an enemy fleeing lord as I spent winning the battle in the first place, and then often not even succeeding, often seeing that enemy lord get away, despite everything. So just change that, recalculate the rewards that you get for winning a battle to be based on the strength of the enemy army instead of based on whether or not you you wounded or killed that enemy lord. That's number two. Number three, change the gate. Oh, I didn't offer the solution. I'm sorry. Change it so that when that gate gets opened for the first time, it stays open. for the rest of the battle. Not a perfect solution. I know others have mentioned better solutions. I'll even offer the second suggestion, which is a much better suggestion, but it might be more difficult for them to do, which is you can't open or close that gate if there is an enemy unit within a certain proximity of it. That's a much cleaner solution, but I don't know how difficult that would be to code. If it is difficult to code that, I would rather just see that gate either be permanently open or permanently closed. You just can't have this constant, or I shouldn't even say constant. You can't have opening and closing happening at all when that gate is being attacked. That's what causes the bug. So, like I said, it's an inelegant solution, but it would at least eliminate the most frustrating part of the walled city battles completely, if you just make it so that once that gate gets opened for the first time, it just stays open for the rest of the battle. All right, anyway, so that's, again, like I said, to summarize, I'm trying to illustrate what I think are the three biggest problems in the game. Not the only problems in the game, but if they could fix just these three things, I believe it would go so far into making this game back into the masterpiece that it ought to be. Still a flawed masterpiece, don't get me wrong, it's not going to fix everything, but these three solutions, I believe, would go so far towards eliminating the three most frustrating aspects of the game that are really holding down the enjoyment that you can get out of this game right now. Anyway, as always, I really appreciate the feedback. Again, as I've said before, many of you come up with solutions that are better than mine. I'm just focused, and I know there are better solutions, I'm just focused on what is super easy to do to eliminate the most frustrating aspects of these problems right now. So, anyway, still, as always, really like hearing your feedback. Let me know what you think of these. Let's try to somehow get this information into the ears of someone who matters at CA, see if they can actually, implement some of these things. And like I said, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here. There's still a lot of fun to be had in this game. You eliminate the worst aspects of these three problems, and I think you've got a really, really, really great game here. All right, anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks everybody so much for watching and listening, and I will see you all in the next video.